go. All right, we got the right slide here. Well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started since it's 11:15. My name is Kevin Carrillo, and I am the host of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. I encourage you to listen to the podcast. It streams pretty much on every platform, and the mission of the podcast is to educate and inform and remove the stigma related to cannabis. So I'm really excited to be moderating this panel today. Cannabinoids in food and beverage, market trends, innovation, and what the future holds. So before we kick this discussion off, I do want to introduce our panelists. To my right, we have Elise Gordon.
Hi there.
Daniel McLaughlin. David McLaughlin, excuse me. Joel Dar. And Carrie Brown. Awesome. So what I'm going to do first is just allow these panelists to introduce themselves and share their background, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So Elise, you want to kick it off?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for allowing me to wear lipstick for the first time in 6 months because I don't have my mask on right now, and in joining us. My background, I'm going to kind of talk about the past for a minute because I started one of the first edible companies in Colorado in '09. Both Rec and Med came from a background of real estate mortgage lending development and jumped in on a whim because someone asked me, knowing that I love to work with food, if I want to get into edibles. So 11 years later, and I used to be 6'3", just to put it in perspective. So it's an interesting business, and I'm loving to see it go forward, which I will say is where you're going to hear a lot of these stories. We did everything. We learned how to extract. We learned how to make oil. We were the first. Nobody knew how to do anything, not to say because we were better, but that's why we jumped in at the beginning. We kind of became the railroad tracks. So the industry is taking a lot of different turns with food and beverage for sure, a lot of new technologies that we experimented with, and it's very interesting now to see the switch. I have a wellness company, CBD, since 2012, and now I would like to put air under the wings of everybody who wants to get in, and beverages and chocolate, and also edibles down there, and CBD infusions. Jump in. It is so exciting. And I'll pass it on to David.
Yeah. Thanks, Elise.
Thank you, Elise.
Yeah, so David McLaughlin. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I've been in health and nutrition for a couple of decades now. And when I first started hearing about CBD 3-4 years ago, I was a little bit like, yeah, I was kind of new to the game, and I saw so many incredible results with friends of mine, and I'm like, okay, this is something that I can really get behind and really helps a lot of people. So we started Sati Organics about 18 months ago, and tinctures, topicals, things like that, but we hired a PhD in food science to help us formulate a ready-to-drink, and that's really because the ones that were on the market at the time, I really didn't like for my own personal consumption. So I wanted to create something that I actually would drink multiple times a day. And this is what we created, Sati Soda. We launched this October of last year, and we're making it in near Boulder, Colorado, and in Austin, Texas. And yeah, it's just been fantastic.
Thank you, David. Mm-hmm. Joel?
Hi. So our story started actually with the chocolate company. After living in Costa Rica, we moved to Colorado 5 years ago and opened a bean-to-bar chocolate company. And 3 years ago, when the whole CBD was all around us, was very trendy, we say, why not just put it in a good chocolate? And later on, we learned that both the cacao and CBD, they both absorb in the body through the endocannabinoid system. So it makes just a perfect pairing and that.
Thank you, Joel. Perfect. Carrie?
Yeah, my name is Carrie Brown. I'm one of the owners of a company called Factory 6. We're a dietary supplement manufacturer. Dietary supplement is the category that CBD falls under, or at least initially it fell under in Utah. We were the first company to get a product certified through the state of Utah. They have their own product registration system. Right about 2017, Utah was coming along with the Utah Cannabinoid Act. And I mentioned that just because it kind of set the rules up for how we operate it, both as a manufacturer and as a finished goods supplier in the state of Utah. So kind of in parallel with the federal 2018 Farm Bill. Actually, Utah came out before the Farm Bill did and set up all the rules on how CBD is supposed to enter the market, what you can and can't do with it. Now we are a worldwide supplier or provider of CBD finished goods, full turnkey products. And so a lot of our clients aren't actually in Utah. So it's kind of interesting. We have to follow Utah rules, but at the same time, we ship around the world. So, yeah. But we spend a lot of time, speaking specifically around beverages, we do a lot of stick packs, dry blends, powders, that kind of thing. So that's our play into the beverage space.
Got you. Well, thank you all for sharing that. And it's clear that, the cannabis-infused food and beverage market is trending, right? And I think that I read an article that said the cannabis drinks market alone is projected to be worth nearly $6 billion by 2024. So while that's all great opportunity and we're excited about what's to come, let's first talk about some of the challenges that y'all face, specifically in the edibles and hemp-infused drink space, right? I mean, the lack of FDA regulation has probably been challenging. I would imagine the science behind full emulsion, and making sure that cannabinoids mix within the liquid is right. So, Elise, you want to kick it off and talk about some of the challenges that you've experienced, specifically in the edibles and food side?
Oh, sure. It was definitely a challenge because nobody knew how to do any of it. And so everything's experimental and it's come very far forward, but one of the things that needs to attach now are the guidelines and the rules, and exactly as you were saying, the homogeneity, which is what that would refer to with encapsulation of not being able to get oil to disperse, and what do you have to do, and how does it not just become a pocket in your can and stick to your metals. And those are all the things now that will be going forward because you've gotten taught the extraction of how to get it out of the plant, and you've been taught all these things, and now who gets to play is who keeps jumping on what are going to be the guidelines. The FDA truly doesn't want us there in their market because we stand to make a big market. And we're pumping wellness through retreats with Soil to Soul companies because all these products are going to go into the market, and the guy who's going to play out is the regulated guy, because I know when we sell now biomass or any of the things that will create these drinks, I am sure as manufacturers, they want COA products, and you want to know your farms, and you want to know all your panels of your tests, and that's where it has to go, and everything's expensive. Everything's expensive. You don't get into this business with $50 and make a story that you made $5 billion. Ain't gonna happen. So I'll defer, but I will undertone. My wind is what will now forward these, because I will educate to testing and rulemaking. As much as I fight it, it still has to be done because hemp was left very open, given to the world to just make products.
Well, Colorado is pretty pro CBD.
Sure.
It's been fantastic, but honestly, we thought we had a great product, but you have to show how the product is in the market, right? Mm-hmm. So we couldn't. No distributors had any interest in us. They're just like, oh yeah, you just got started. So my business partner and I, we actually had to hit the streets And we personally put it in 120 locations in 60 days, the two of us.
Wow.
Just walking in. I mean, like old school, boots on the ground.
Well, and you mentioned you were doing trial and error even before that. You were kind of making
Oh.
sure that the product tasted good on your end.
Yeah,
and-
no, I'm
yeah.
sorry, yeah. I mean, it was 6 months that we wanted to make sure that we had a really quality product with all the, the quality of the CBD, the quality of the other ingredients. We use organic ingredients. I think it does come back to like, we had a product that we truly believed in, that we really consume, and I think that comes across. So I think if people are looking to get into this space, they find a product that they really want to consume for themselves, right? And see if maybe there's a niche for that. Or it's just something like, there were other drinks on the market, but like I said, I wanted to have my own that I really liked.
Right.
But distribution is, it's a big deal when it comes to getting your product to market, especially if you want to have a larger national footprint. We had to prove ourselves right in our backyard, even being a Colorado company. So after we got those 120 locations, the distributor's like, oh, okay. Throw a product together, and then the distributors just line up saying, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of money involved too, and a lot of risk. Because we knew going in, the FDA is just it's in this very gray area where they're letting the states deal with it.
Right. It's a Wild West. Yeah.
It is a Wild West, and you have to know that money that you're risking, they could come in and shut it down at any point. And anytime, and people think that couldn't happen. Of course that could happen.
3 banks, 2 credit unions, name changing. It happens, and it's super serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is, people, as soon as you say you're in the cannabis industry, they think I should have been dropped off with a limo, that you're rolling in money. It's not there. This is a very, very, very expensive, and not to talk people out of it, but it will only get more expensive because you're going to have to pay for GMPing your kitchens or your facilities. You're going to have to learn to be as compliant as FDA, because FDA will be the parent and all the corporations will be the first child if you let them. Because if you're a small business, the best polish is that you shoot up or you get bought out because you made your company acquirable by a very large company who follows every guideline that the government will lay down. And the products have to be top of the mark because now anybody does them. So it is really serious for the consumer to start weeding out, because you've got labels that say, whatever that necessary USDA, FDA guidelines have to be on it. So it's a real big strive, and don't let your investors talk you into a super favor of giving you a couple $100,000, because it.
For us, the main challenge is actually the flavor, because we use full spectrum in the chocolate, and we had to try like dozens and dozens of oils until we find something that you can put in the chocolate and don't have the bad flavor of the hemp, but still to feel that there is a CBD in it. As to regulation and all the FDA, I also see an advantage in it, because as long as they're not clear about this, the big companies stay out of the game.
That's right.
And it gives
Till
us a
they're
chance
clear.
to establish ourselves.
That's the catch-22, right?
is.
It's like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can see the advantage in this too. So
It is. This is when you make the money, when it's the Wild West, like we did.
Yep.
And then it becomes unwild.
How about you, Carrie? Have you had any similar challenges in terms of like taste or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've run into a lot of the similar manufacturing challenges, learned a lot of learning over the last couple of years on how to deal with CBD in a manufacturing environment. I'd say I agree, the biggest hurdle to growth in the hemp space so far, at least when you're talking about food and beverage is the FDA, right? By not having clear rules, that's slowed the market down for sure. But at the same time, it's given all of us, an opportunity to get established, right? And all the new companies, that window is still there, because once the FDA comes out with their rules, I firmly believe the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the big boys in the world are going to, come in very quickly and very rapidly, right?
They're
So
totally
now's the
positioning.
time to kind of get established, to get your processes in place, and it took us a long time, a bunch of, quite a few dollars and headaches to get GMP certified, right? And but we're doing that in preparation of this, refining fire of FDA and regulation coming down the pike.
Right. Well, and along those lines of the lack of FDA regulation, there are some other unintended consequences like over-marketing, false claims and whatnot of the cannabinoids. So for each of you, like what has been consumer response, right? Whether it's a specific demographic that consumes your product or if it's more broadly, like what is the level of understanding from your consumers when it comes to the cannabinoids or what it does?
They know very little. The consumer knows very little. Now I'm on an education track because I'm a little jaded because I forgot how much information I know from day one. It's like a reel-to-reel tape, and I kind of giggle when something is new to people and not being snotty or have any kind of attitude about it. And to understand that they've only been educated by this 3 letters CBD, like they're M&Ms in a bowl. Could I have some CBD, please? So we have to educate them that this plant has a whole bunch more to offer. CBD brought them into the market so that they would start to want to understand it. And there's 111, 115 cannabinoids that we know about, and probably 10 or 20 we have a grasp on that are extracted. So it's really, really important if you get your consumers on board to understand what is a cannabinoid, what is an endocannabinoid system. You have to educate them because they'll just say no on everything. They can't figure out why anything happens because just to let you in on an example would be, there was a development for a CBD product, and it comes out of a humidifier from Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know how you just admit CBD into the air and absorb it. It's very interesting. So things like that, pillows, clothing, that absorb into your skin, and it's because we're not regulated. And when we had the opportunity, when we started in 12 with CBD, of getting one certificate, because that's all they would have, you just got it, and you kept doing what you're saying. It's the Wild West. Make your money, do your SOPs, know what's coming. It's coming, it's coming. You can be proactive or you can be post-active. And that's good. It's going to push all your products ahead and everybody who gets on board, because that's the problem. We had people, you go in, the testing proved on a very large company that every time they were selling their 500 milligram bar, it had about 10 milligrams in the bar because nobody was checking them. You can know or think because you have a formula, but until it's run through some kind of testing machinery, it makes your consumer more comfortable. You're not buying it off Amazon or Groupon where there's 1,000 products because nobody's regulated. They made it in a jug in their yard. Mm-hmm. Go with regulated companies that are trying to buy regulated products from good farmers who deserve to be paid for their products. And we have to clamp together as an industry to make all that happen and not have so many individual groups. Mm-hmm. Because we will get taken over by the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, and everybody because they're positioning, because they already follow these guidelines. So...
The first drinks, they didn't have a QR code on them. I think more and more people, I don't know if it's mandatory, but
with their COAs or
yeah,
to go to the test.
Yeah, in the testing, Santee Labs tests our batches, and so, I mean, we say there's 23 milligrams in there. It's within a 10% on beverages, and the tests show, that it's in there. So,
right.
we didn't care if it was mandatory or not. It was mandatory for us.
Sure.
We wanted to show people, like, we've got nothing to hide. Here it is.
It's eventually going to happen, right? And when it does, these other companies are going to
So
have
release
to,
the sand. So
right?
everyone's
Yeah,
saying, like, do the things that are going to be required down
Right.
the road anyway. And it's important. I mean,
it's the right thing to do. Yeah,
it's the right thing to do. I mean, a lot of people don't know what ashwagandha is, or theanine, or rhodiola, and some of the other ingredients that we use in our beverages. They're functional ingredients. So we have the CBD, obviously, but we also have these other. It's not just water with a little bit of sugar and CBD. That's what I found how most of them are. You know, we want to put other clean, organic, high quality ingredients in it from the absolute best vendors that are that are available.
and
So we have a great product.
it's almost like it's a red flag if it doesn't have that documentation on it. I mean, on my podcast, I had one guest that does national testing at a national level, and I think CBS News tapped him for one study, and in 2019 they sourced 80 or all products that contained CBD on Amazon, and 80% came back with no THC or no CBD in it at all. So you can just kind of see that.
And that's why Amazon no longer sells CBD products.
Right.
I mean, that was a big part of it.
Right.
Exactly.
Which leads to detractors in the industry and whatnot. And Joel, so what is your experience with your consumers and their understanding of your
Interesting.
product and the cannabinoids?
Yeah, I mean, we also have this little QR
That's
on
right.
our product
Yeah.
that goes directly to the COA. It makes first it makes customer more to trust and
Reassured.
feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
We usually, when we asked about the CBD, I mean, we just say that CBD is what you call adaptogenic, and it helps different people for different things. So most people that take it, it helps them for one thing or another. For very little people, it doesn't have any effect. And I think the only complaint we got one time from a customer, a mom in Washington, was that she was taking her son to a soccer game, and she ate half of a bar of 240 milligrams. And she started to feel dizzy and stuff, and said, I mean,
That'll do it.
read the, yeah, so that was the only complaint, but most people, I mean, many people get back to us and, and it helped them for pain or for sleep or for that, and we are not allowed to say anything, but we let people do the,
Right.
To that point, get a beverage attorney. There's one, I forget his name, but we hired the guy in Denver who that's all they do is beverages.
Keith.
Cannabis or hemp beverages, because they go over. You don't want to go spending tens of thousands on sleeves or cans or whatever. You got until you have legal looking at your labels.
Right, because there's always going to be changes, or you might not get it right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's a big piece, and it ties into your
Yeah,
supplements.
maybe
I'm sure.
I could add a little color to that.
Yeah.
Though they're not our brands, right? And it might be, your brand. If you send us a label, we have to do a legal review on it. And so the good news is labels are not difficult. If you've never done one before, there's plenty of good people you can find that can help you through that process. But standard nutritional fact panel labels or dietary supplement labels or food labels, they're all very clearly laid out by the FDA. And then they've all been modified a little bit, to add cannabidiol to it and how to speak to literally, hundreds and hundreds of different labels this year, for all different products, all different brands through our facility, and we review every single one of them. That ruling came out from the FDA just not too long ago, where they actually hold us responsible as a manufacturer. So nothing, if you're going to a good contract manufacturer, nothing should be going out mislabeled. We do require, even though not every state requires QR codes linking back to C of A, as a manufacturer, we do, just to make sure that everything's transparent, you've got nothing to hide.
Right.
If we say there's 100 milligrams in there or there's 1,000 milligrams in there, lab to lab or even from, test to test, you're going to see potentially a 5 to 10% differential. And so we just have to, you make sure that you're within that accepted differential.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So, well, outside, and I know that we're running close on time, and I want to leave time for Q&A. So to wrap this up, what, outside the challenges and, your perspective from your customers, what excites you about the future? Like, what's the future outlook when it comes to cannabis-infused, food and beverage?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I love like high quality, clean products like this. I think there is a movement towards it, right? I think I love people drinking this instead of Sprite, for example, or Pepsi or Coke, or just because I know this is better for them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what excites me. And along with all these other incredible products, CBD is actually, it seems like the people that are making CBD products in food and beverages seem to be more on the wellness side of things, prevention, right? So I'm excited to see what more products come out soon.
I think the future is that CBD will be everywhere. In your drink, in your chocolate, in olive oil that you put on your salad, and I think it will become part of our life.
Just CBD, or do you foresee the other cannabinoids also?
You took my spit.
CBD or other cannabinoids,
Yeah.
whatever is good, but I think that this is where it's going. It will be everywhere. You will consume it along the day in different ways as part of your daily.
Yeah, we agree. We see a huge future in overall cannabinoids and CBD obviously leading the charge. Once federal legalization comes along for the THC side, that's going to open up additional doors. So the market's definitely got a bright future. We love the beverage space and combining ingredients, which I'm glad you mentioned. How does CBD work with L-theanine or magnesium, and can you get it? I tell people all the time, CBD and caffeine are the two ingredients. Like, you can take 50 milligrams of it and you're going to feel it, right? There's vitamin C won't do that, vitamin D doesn't. There's very few ingredients you can say 50 milligrams of this and you're going to have an effect.
Right.
And CBD and caffeine both do that.
Yeah, I feel this right now, and I've been drinking it as I've been moderating, and so it's really helped. It's been good. So thank you for that.
And I'd like to add, from my perspective for the future, is I've switched it around to bring it back to wellness. And because all of this is going back to we need to heal, we're creating retreats for people, soil to soul, where all these products can be intertwined and cross-marketed into the public coming to events to learn how to not only use CBD, you have to learn what all the cannabinoids do. So don't marry it. Embrace it, because it's the one happening right now that the public's kind of market grill, how words catch on. So they're playing it, but when you grab them, talk about what the other cannabinoids are, because it might address something even more massive that they didn't even know could be addressed. Send them to a retreat. Send them to understand how to eat, how to drink properly. Use the words balance and inner good feelings, because every time you use any of these buzzwords that sound like you're improving somebody's outside their spirit, you've just conflicted with the FDA. So that's why, again, the more you step on their page, you'll keep becoming compliant, but you're educating the consumer to endorse products that will pick up cannabinoids, whether it's CBD, THC, CBG. It's kind of like a satellite and cable station. That's how many there are. Do you want HGTV? You want CBD, CBG? So, learn them, and they really have a lot of benefits, and add them to all these products, and next time we talk, you'll have 4 more cannabinoids in your can.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's important to own that first cannabis conversation when you talk to others that don't have experience. So with that, we want to open it up to the floor. Is there anybody that has questions for these panelists? In the back? And then we'll get you.
Yes. To your note about CBD, what are some other cannabinoids that you could, I'm really loud. What are some other cannabinoids
Very possible. Yeah, I mean, we're so in the trenches with getting our baby here out to the public that it's hard for us right now to look, into that, but we definitely want to. I mean, we want to be on the cutting edge of new but proven, right? That's the other thing. I think we're a little bit like, well, we want to know that this new ingredient, this new cannabinoid, something that really it shows that it's got a bit of a track record, right? So that's what we want. But we're open
What
to.
about the manufacturing space? Are you seeing more folks, clients bringing in different cannabinoids?
Yeah, absolutely. As a manufacturer, philosophically, we like the whole plant story, right? Like use the plant as it was intended to be used, use it as a whole plant, full spectrum, all of that, right? Now, there are certain cannabinoids that have, added effect. Our sleep chewable, for example, right? We put CBD with CBN in it, of course, right? So you get a little added benefit there, and not a little, quite a bit of added benefit. But so I think, understanding what the different benefits are and then using them appropriately. But at the end of the day, going back to your point, the whole plant's there for a purpose, and there's a reason, so kind of use all of those ingredients. We like to start there. Then if you want to add to or take away, for specific markets or challenges, you can do it.
I think we had a question up here, and then you'll be next. Go ahead.
So my basic question comes down to the FDA letters that have gone out over the years, where they consistently reference that the foods being sold are considered adulterated because of the incorporation of a active pharmaceutical ingredient in the food. It does seem like the individual states are letting people operate, but the FDA really comes into play when you're engaging in interstate commerce. Do you guys have a strategy for interstate commerce, or do you operate exclusively within states? Or do you just basically say, yes, we're running things and it's not quite legal, but we're running things this way?
I can,
Jump on it.
okay, I mean,
You go in.
Washington State, to my knowledge right now, is the only state. I've heard South Dakota, we haven't gone there yet, but they just passed rec, so I can't imagine now they're too concerned about CBD. But Washington State, for some reason, they have regulators out in the market taking food and drinks with CBD off the shelf. They for some reason they choose to follow the feds not being clear around all of it, and but it's really, I mean, we ship pallets all over the country. We have no issues at all, and I think it's just really gonna. I think it's really a state thing. Now, within the states, you've got the big retailers, H-E-B here in Texas, Whole Foods. None of these big retailers are taking on food and drinks with CBD in them. For them,
'Cause they're
it's too
publicly
risky,
traded.
it's too gray, and they're not. They're gonna wait until the official ruling comes out, and then you'll see a huge amount of growth. I think, so many products will be in Whole Foods, right, that have CBD in it. I mean, I'm sure they'll have whole sections. of
They're
the
there
store.
now. They're there now in Sprouts, and they have a case. These stores are, just for the record, it's not always the best to just be picked up by a big retailer, because they make money, but you get to say, oh, I'm in Walgreens or Walmart or whatever. This is a time to really perfect your product. This is a time to really be the bomb. This is a time for you to really zero in on the fact that the FDA will still run you. And right now, while it's gray, I did 10 years of gray, because you could go in with a rule that's written in their little guideline booklet and ask them to clarify it, and they'll go, oh, no, we won't write out anything. So you just keep forging forward, and when they take your stuff from the post office, because it's okay to mail it again. Just keep going. And I don't know if there's federales in the room, but I'm telling you, they are too gray. They either make a rule and we are willing to follow it as an industry, or get out of our way. Because we're coming, and we're coming strong, and we're gonna bring every cannabinoid to the forefront, and we're gonna mail it to every state, and we're driving it, and they're stopping it. And we keep driving it, and we keep going, and I'll give you a tip. When you get that great deal on 50,000 labels and you finally go ahead and buy it, they're going to change the way it goes on the can and the verbiage so that you have to throw them in the trash can. So you buy a machine that makes labels individually so you can print 100. But they didn't have that when we started. So we had to buy in bulk. You buy what's going to go on your can because they are going to change, because that's the game. It's musical chairs. And if you don't pay to play with all the different things they ask you to do, you're a bye-bye. And that's what all these regulations will do. So we haven't really been supposed to be mailing for a long time, but we all do mail. And they all do stop it. But legally, they can't do anything about it because it's not unlegal. It's kind of gray. So that's my take from just before to after.
And go ahead, you in the back, and then I'll get you next. Yeah.
Yeah, could you touch on as a company, your marketing strategy before you started all this with your great ideas, and time, money, and effort? How much of that did you put into it? And then you're taking a product to market. What is your process? What's your strategy? Again, kind of the time, money, and effort that you put into it.
Time, sorry, what was it again? Time, money, effort? Yeah.
Go-to-market strategy.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, first thing, identifying what it is that you want to create, right? Definitely finding a contract manufacturer. I mean, it's so expensive to build out a facility. I mean, millions of dollars to build out either a canning facility or a supplement facility where you would actually make it. So most people go with a contract manufacturer. Right? I mean,
Right, yeah.
and then,
Because we did those jobs for.
and then, yeah, I would definitely spend the money. I don't know if everyone hires a PhD food scientist to help create their product, but we wanted to. We really wanted to. We figure you're gonna spend the money at some point, or it's not gonna work. I mean, right? So you lose money. So for us, it was like, let's spend the money up front to get something that's really of quality, right? So, and then, yeah, everything costs at least double what you thought starting out. When you're writing things down, your line items and stuff, it's like, okay. And then at the very bottom, you times by 2, if you're lucky, right? It's just so many unforeseen things. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the contract manufacturing, small batches, we did a lot of small batching in the beginning, right? We didn't go spending 25 grand every time we ran. We ran $2,000, $3,000 batches to really okay, do a test market with your peers and people in the community, get feedback, that's, I think, really, truly important. We did a lot of that, actually. We
Can
took
I
them to
add
music
to yours?
festivals and gave them out
Oh,
and
I
said,
can
can you
add
give
to
us feedback and things like that. So anyway, I'm going on.
Marketing is a bit tricky with CBD products because there are many things you cannot say, or you cannot, you cannot do paid advertising online, or you cannot claim a lot of things, and so it has to be. We just started a few months ago to do an SEO, organic SEO for the chocolate, And part of that was a blog that had links to other blogs that claimed things. And it was a few weeks after that our account at Square was frozen, just because we had a blog that had a link to somewhere that they claimed benefits of CBD. Now it's solved, luckily. But so you must be much more creative about marketing of CBD products.
I want to add to your another issue is still the fact that the feds aren't on board, really, even though hemp's got a leg up, if that's where you're working with that kind of product. It's hard to give it a timeline because if you're building out a facility, you have to deal with all your municipalities and your building codes and everything that goes into making that facility be what it is. If you're on a tight budget, it can really hurt you without having cash infusion because there's so much involved, and the process is hard to say when your product will take off or go to market because you have to find what your market is. So testing things that group things you go to, giving out your samples, really, having your product move forward is part of it. But there's so many little things that can get tweaked just as you're about to go to market. So it's hard to give someone a full picture of how to fully get it out there. But marketing dollars are probably one of the biggest things you need to focus on so people know your product's there. You need to have people in their own lane is super, super important. Don't think you can do everything in your company, even though you have the ability to understand it, get professionals. And if you don't have a lot of money, maybe start white labeling with what ingredients you want in the product, but you go to a white labeler who already has formulated your baseline, because all the big companies like L'Oreal and cosmetics, they white label a lot of all the base stuff. And getting a formulator, a scientist, and all those kind of guys on your team at the beginning can be very, very more expensive. So it's really important to structure how your lanes can fill up so that you've got people and referrals and they're saying, go buy this product.
If it's okay, I want to just add a quick suggestion, and I hope it doesn't sound too self-promoting here. Because we do white label, right? And I highly recommend it. I don't care if you buy it from us or not, but knowing your audience is key and first and foremost. And white label allows you to buy like as low as 50 or 100 bottles at a time and figure out, is this going to play with your audience, right? And if it does, great. Then take it and go do something custom. We've seen people come in from different startups, and they'll say, hey, we want to do a custom product. And yes, we've got formulators and flavor scientists and stuff on staff that can help go through that process, but to develop a custom product, even in a pretty systemized process like we have, still takes about 10 to 12 weeks from the time you have the idea to the time you might be having your first production run and kind of getting out the door. And so whereas we have, our white labelers have product on the shelf today, you can, test it, check it, get the market feedback before you invest the capital to do an initial, custom run.
Yeah, what you're explaining is like business 101 in terms of like rolling out a prototype or rolling out an MVP, a minimum viable product, getting results, having your potential customers test it out, and then dialing it in, right? So go ahead, I think you had a question.
Yeah. Hi guys, so as David mentioned, I'm from Sante Labs. We're so excited for all of you guys. Not only do we see the FDA turning, but we're actually working with some of the retailers that you mentioned on what their compliance programs look like now that they're ramping up to be ready for the FDA to turn and to take ingestible CBD products. And so one of the things, I have a really long retail background, and one of the things that we know is going to be at the forefront of the conversation is shelf life. And I'd love to know how you guys are mitigating that risk, and what are you doing from day one to over time to take into account degradation and oxidation. I'd love to hear more about that.
That's great.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah. Well, our food scientists, our PhD food scientists, we worked with her with incubation periods right from the get-go. I mean, that was like one of the big things, Fortunately, so we have an 18-month shelf life for the product. It's gone fast. I mean, fortunately, our turns, we're making pretty big batches every month, just to to keep up with the demand, which is really good. But those things are all really important, and that's why you hire the bright people that know these things, right? That know more than you. That's what I recommend.
Yes, go
Who
ahead.
else?
So you're a product manufacturer.
Well, the good thing about chocolate that has no expiration date. I mean, as long as it's stored well, it can be forever. But we put 1 year just because we are required to put something. So, and it never lasts too long.
So we do, most of the products we manufacture, our clients want to have a two-year best by date. And in order to do that, you can actually get a stability test done, and they have accelerated stability tests. Obviously, you can manufacture it and just sit some on the shelf for a couple years and see what happens, go back and test it at the end of that time period, but that's a slow process, right? So you hire a lab, it's for a couple $1,000, and have them do a accelerated stability test on your product and see how it degrades over time. The oxidation is real. Now, CBD itself is very stable. However, color change will happen. You'll get potential microbial contaminants over time. You got to really watch for yeast and mold and all this kind of stuff. And that's why you hire a lab to do it. And that's the best answer.
And it goes back to the testing, because people don't understand that in order to have shelf life, you do have to end up with some preservatives. You don't put an organic product on the shelf and then tell them it's going to be stable for a year or 18 months or 24. Not going to happen.
Thank you.
And we had to experiment with a lot of it because we made and baked absolutely everything from scratch. And we weren't considering ourselves organic, but we had dispensaries that were like, well, we got to have it on the shelf at least a year, which of course told me they needed better marketing. But it was kind of that whole thing. You have to base it on a year. Now you're talking about food. So that's, again, how do you stabilize food for a year unless it's got a lot of things in it that aren't as healthy as you want. So finding that balance of what works. And it's probably with a beverage, it's more about losing carbonation than maybe you're losing the strength of something. But that's what you do. Stability is very hard because you've got to get something in there that stabilizes a food product, an ingestible. And just to add that is also for people to understand with education, there are certain things you can't eat, and there's certain things you can't smoke, but yet they put them in the vape pens, and I won't mention names, but MCT oil is one of those products, and you don't smoke it, you ingest it, it's a good eating product. So that's, again, learning that you're thinking you're doing your public service by giving people essential oils. Maybe so if you're making a topical, but was it a food-grade oil that you could eat? So those are all the things, again, why regulations come into place. And one last story, I just have to tell this because it's why testing started.
Go for it, yeah.
There was a major Colorado company that sold a lot of products, and I won't mention names, but they went into a dispensary of people that I know that had started up one, and the people kept returning the product because they said they weren't feeling anything. And when they finally took it into a lab for the first time, because all we had were mobile labs, the bars were, it was a 300 milligram bar. It was a medical. You could have any milligrams in it you wanted. You could say anything you wanted. Doesn't mean it was in there. 50 milligrams was barely showing up a bar. And it blew up. I don't know if you remember this whole situation. It blew up, and it started this whole metric system of seed to sale. It started testing, and it started what we had at the time, which was forced vertical integration, which nobody wanted. They thought it was so gross and like instantly marrying your grower. And now we've all come back to it, so we could all be responsible for every level of our own product, to see that it's tested, to see that it's made it to the places it needs to get. And that's what becomes the most important, is people are taking these products, and if we control it better, we don't need the FDA to be our guide. The FDA is going to be our guide because we have bad players. Mm-hmm. So if you become a good player, you'll help us all.
And we'll support each other, that's right. Yep. All right, well, I think we're over time, so appreciate all the questions, and thank you again to our panelists. And that wraps